when I'm doing this, it feels a little bit like I'm standing on the helm of a ship. Today, I am going to talk to you about an absolutely spectacular book, another blind buy from the library book sale, of course, that I finished reading recently. This, of course, as you may have guessed by the title, is Margaret George's Memoirs of Cleopatra. This book affected me in so many ways that I'm kind of struggling a little bit to know where to start with it. This is my first ever exposure to Cleopatra's story. The only thing that I knew going into this absolutely behemoth text was that she killed herself via snake bite in order to basically prevent herself from being something by the Romans. I wasn't sure if it was rape she was avoiding or capture or humiliation. It turned out to be more the latter two. As I'm sure most people watching this, sorry, I have something in my eye, of course, the second that I start trying to film. I went into this book and picked it up specifically because I have been really leaning into fiction and historical fiction this year. I picked this up at the library book sale for I think literally like $1.50. It was ridiculously cheap because it was a paperback, and I got it because I've really been leaning into fiction and historical fiction, and somewhat recently, last year, I read Imperial Woman by Pearl S. Buck, which was another blind buy from a library book sale, and that also was about a woman ruler. It was about the last empress of China. I don't know, I guess I've been like really leaning into like historical fiction about women recently. And I also have been really kind of starting to gravitate more and more towards large books. I am starting to feel more and more skeptical of books with very low page counts because I have been burned by those just too many fucking times at this point. Those are the books where I am finding stuff that I think is cringe. I'm finding culture war bullshit. If you know my tag on Goodreads, tested positive for culture war bullshit, then like many of those books are fictions with very low page counts. You know, a lot of narratives with just like unfinished stories. And so this one I picked up being like, just like, all right, I'm in the mood for a tome. Really, like, take me away. If you were watching my updates about this book on Goodreads, you know that this book actually initially took me a little bit of time to be won over by it. I was kind of complaining off and on a little bit about this book because I think like maybe a side effect of reading big books is that I expect more from them because they're large and because I expect more of like the capacity of the writer behind them. I guess like the storytelling capacity, and not just in quantity but also in quality. I guess in my mind those two things go hand in hand. And so I was a little bit like complaining on and off about this. I think maybe looking back, I was reading this looking for problems because I wanted to be sure when I came out of it, if I came out of it happy, I wanted to be sure that I was being fully honest with you and also with myself. And now that I am a little bit removed from it, I also have some fresh thoughts on big books and why I think the publishing industry is wrong to be scorning big books in this day and age. And it's not just because I keep getting scorned because of my big book. The literary agents are like falling just short of telling me to kill myself over. Yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on big books and why I think people are misguided in saying about every single big book that it needs an editor. That was one of the first Goodreads comments that I saw about this book. And if you look at it, it's very big. So in terms of like its actual size, it is very big. And then in terms of page count, we are at 964. So not only is it taller and wider than your average book, it also is almost 1,000 pages on top of that. If this was your normal 8.25 by 5.25, this would be well over 1,000 pages. And to that Goodreads comment who says this needed an editor, I actually could not disagree more, and I'm going to tell you why. But before I do that, I should tell you, so this obviously is not the real Memoirs of Cleopatra. It would be fucking amazing if we had something like that, but we don't. So this is basically like a novelization of Cleopatra's life, told as if it is her writing her memoirs of her life. There is a review on the cover of this from Publishers Weekly saying that this book is a magic carpet, and genuinely, like, I cannot express to you enough how immersive this was. Frankly, if this had been any shorter, I would have been deprived of that, and everyone who has ever read this and been affected by it would have been deprived of that. This is an absolute triumph. Like, when I finished this, I truly felt like I had lived an entire lifetime, and like that entire lifetime had been spent in ancient Egypt. The detail of this is so vivid and so well thought out. I mean, just everything about it. It's not just like the way that she sets the scene. She actually, you know what, Margaret George does something very similar to what Pearl S. Buck does in Imperial Woman, where she is never afraid to give like the little details about things. It is not just like I walked through the palace and I wrote on a piece of papyrus. It is, we're talking about what the weather is like every day, and we're talking about how the weather changes as you move up and down the Nile, and we're talking about all of the interest, like the physical characteristics of all of the people that she interacts with, and what the sex is like, and what the food is like, and like internal emotions and grief and religion. I don't think it is like super graphic, so I wouldn't ever compare it to something like Gary Jennings' Aztec. The only word that keeps coming to mind for me is like realistic, because Aztec is like you're kind of capturing the bloodiness of that empire. This is, I mean, Cleopatra was basically the last pharaoh, like the last proper pharaoh that Egypt had. And this book is accurately capturing like the grandiosity of Egypt and what the ancient Egyptian Ptolemy dynasty looked like and what it meant too. I feel like it's the crocodiles. It's the lighthouse on the shores. It's her visiting Alexander's tomb and like musing over his corpse, and then her relationship to that changing as she gets older. It's her going swimming for the first time and conquering her fear of water. That review that said it needed an editor was complaining about that scene where she conquers her fear of water. But to me, first of all, I didn't really feel like it dragged on that much. And second of all, I felt like her learning to conquer her fear of water, this is like at the very beginning of the book, right? So her mother drowned when she was very young, and she basically like watched her mother drown. And so she has this very petrifying fear of water to start off the novel. She is out with some friends swimming, and she is absolutely petrified, and you can feel her fear. What does she do under duress? She swallows that fear, and she goes and swims with them, and they only find out later after they're back on the shore, like, well, why didn't you say something? Like, you know, because they find out that she was so afraid. To me, that sets up her character and who she is for the entire rest of the book. Cleopatra is somebody who does what she has to do, and who, no matter what, maintains her cool under duress. There is only one time in this entire almost 1,000 pages when she loses her cool, and it comes close to the very end. I think something that maybe that comment and like other people in general maybe don't think about when they are thinking about the length of a book and how much length is warranted. I've talked before on here about how, like, I think it takes a special kind of skill to be able to do all of the fleshing out that something like this requires. Apparently, this masterpiece took her 4 years. Only 4 years. My own, oh God, what even is it? 800? No, it's actually less if you put it in proper formatting. It's like a little bit under 800 pages, like 700 and something. That took me 6 years to do. And it is considerably less ambitious and less detailed and less research intensive than this one is. So I know I've talked before about like the skill set that goes into writing something long, and how I think that, I mean, by nature, you are providing more to the reader and giving more detail to the reader. I think that maybe something that people don't think about is, like, especially for, like, we can say what we want about like my novel or other novels. You know, you can say what you want about all that. Maybe one thing that people aren't thinking about for like this is, like, this is about a real person's life. That is a real person who is not here and can't defend themselves. I have criticized Allison Epstein's A Tip for the Hangman, which is like a 300-page something about Kit Marlowe, because it is characterizing him in ways that that potentially like a man from that time period would have found degrading. I mean, who knows? Like, we don't know Kit Marlowe. We don't know what he was actually like. But I'm not talking about just making it fun. I'm talking about like making him quite pathetic in a way where it's like condescending and like, look how cute he is. And in contrast, this is like giving real proper reverence and respect for Cleopatra, and also like giving respect to like the concept of having somebody's whole life in a novel. I will say that it took me a minute to understand and get into the pacing of this. I think that you do have to kind of surrender to it a little bit, and not like resign yourself, but basically just like accept that this is a book that you're going to be reading for a while. And I did the same thing with Imperial Woman, and honestly, it really made my reading experience so much more pleasant. I felt like I could truly immerse myself and savor every single word, instead of constantly being like, oh, come on, where is this going? Blah, blah, blah. Like, I could actually truly like linger on the descriptions of Egypt. And because of that, like, I walked away with a much more vivid image of ancient Egypt and of Cleopatra the woman, at least as Margaret George imagines her to be, than I like would have if I had been trying to like rush through this. There is something about like a long and leisurely and just lusciously detailed historical fiction about a very powerful, very clever, and perhaps a little bit manipulative woman ruler in this day and age. That is giving me so much life right now. Yeah, I think that the pacing, I'm not lying, it does take a little bit of like getting used to, and you have to basically, this is part of why I lowered my reading goal from 52 to 26 books this year, because I wanted to be free to find stuff like this and like truly just savor every page and not worry about how fast I was getting through it. I think this ended up taking me like a month to get through. Oh my God, you guys, I'm just in love with all of the characters, all of the people that she was writing about. And I fucking think that Margaret George is a true genius. I think that the kind of mind that it takes to construct something this intricate and this carefully planned and vivid and this affecting, and like not everybody has that, and frankly very few writers have that as well. I think that a lot of the times when this was going slower, such as when she was dealing with grief or dealing with very difficult military campaigns with Mark Antony, you know, or going to just feast after feast, like I think that like at the end of the day, I think the novel actually benefited from those things, because the very fact that the reader is lingering with the characters in those places effortlessly communicates for example, with the feast, the tedium of politics and how putting pearls in your drink that you then crunch when they come out of the cup, how even that, glamorous as it is, can be wearisome. And it helps to put you in the character's headspace because it's like, oh my God, another feast. I think that like the military campaigns with Antony, you feel their misery because they are stuck and things are just getting worse and worse, and it's just the camp accommodations are terrible. And you feel that more because the book gives it a fair amount of space. Instead of just like putting it on the reader to construct that entire experience in their mind. With something like this, literally all you have to do is sit back and read. You are not going to miss stuff if, you know, you're not feeling creative that way and you don't feel like doing the extra work of imagining the military campaigns with Mark Antony because author Joe Schmo decided to only give it, you know, one paragraph in their 250-page literary fiction or whatever. This truly, like, you don't have to do that work. And I think both as a writer and as a reader, I always have respect for books that are generous with the reader. And I think that this book is one that is extremely, extremely generous with their reader, because she is giving you all of the details that you could ever want. And it's, the burden is not on you to learn about ancient Egypt on your own and be able to fill in the blanks where she doesn't bother. Like, she has filled in every gap. The novel is watertight. Yeah, and all you have to do is just sit back and read. She provides everything for you. It's a fucking banquet. I don't know. Not everybody can do that, I don't think. Yeah, I think the pacing is actually really well done because it was giving emotional events their due weight, as opposed to just kind of hurrying through them so we can get on to something like more exciting. Every single sibling's death, the Ptolemy siblings' deaths, every single one of their deaths is given its proper weight and attention. And there are even these little moments where she is like revisiting memories of these siblings that in any other book would be rendered just like minor characters. And in this, they are minor characters, mostly, to be sure, but it's like you never feel like anyone is getting shortchanged. Like, she has a corrupt sister who early on in the novel, she like tries to, well, she goes traitor and basically tries to compete with Cleopatra for the throne. And, well, spoiler alert, but she does not face a very good end. And there is a moment literally hundreds of pages later where Cleopatra is walking past the prison that she was housed in before she had her, and she like has a moment of like sadness and regret where she like knows she did what she had to do, but at the same time is like just like that deep feeling of like loneliness and emptiness of like being a ruler and having to do terrible things sometimes to your own flesh and blood. There is this this talks a little bit about the like supposed Ptolemy curse of like Ptolemy siblings from the Egyptian dynasty are supposedly like prone to killing each other for the throne and prone to great strife. And it's interesting because in this, it's like she is not necessarily any exception to that. It's just she won. To give you guys an idea of how immersive this novel was, after it was long done, I was at a rock store, like a witchy rock store with Victor, and I felt very compelled to pick up this fluorite crocodile. I'll put him closer here so you can see, or her. I think it would be a her. Can we focus maybe? Yeah, it's like it's a fluorite crocodile. Perhaps I'll call her Florence. Yeah, I literally, because it's just been on my mind. It's funny because when I was reading this, I also was doing, I was going to make a video about this. I don't think it's going to happen now. I was doing what I call digital detox God mode, where I wanted to basically go cold turkey off of any kind of digital media whatsoever. So not just no social media, no YouTube, whatever, no television, no movies, no listening to music, no listening to podcasts, probably forgetting something, but yeah, you get the picture. Literally, basically like no entertainment except for books. And you know, one of the major things that I took away from that was actually like when people talk about doing like digital detoxes, a lot of times they say that their mind feels like sharper. And for me, that in this case, that was not necessarily that experience. I think that actually it's like I felt my mind moving a lot more slowly, and it's like my thoughts were clearer, but they were also a lot slower. Like you guys have no idea, if you try this, life will slow down so much. Like you have no idea how long a week truly is until you try something like this. Everything moved at such a slower pace, and I think that was like perfectly appropriate to like reading this book, because when you get your mind to slow down and move at like a more natural pace that is not artificially spurred forward or sped up by compulsive consumption of entertainment, I don't know, it's like you feel like reading something like this and reading it at a normal pace, like it doesn't even cross your mind that it could possibly feel like a chore or that this could possibly be too long. Because to me, in that state of mind, that was when I realized that the pacing for this book was actually incredibly appropriate. And that if it had been any faster, it potentially would have been verging on disrespectful. And I understood, because I was living my life at a slower, more drawn out pace, I more understood what would be lost if so many of those things that needed to be edited out were. And this is my last thought on like the just like publishing shit and how you know, if you don't know, like I'm an author, I am like trying to get an agent for my second book, and it has been literal universal doors slammed in my face, sometimes with a steady drip of condescension because my book is long. My novel is not long because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. My novel is long because stylistically it needs to be that long, because I am writing about a big issue and something that is very important and very complex. And if I cut that down to an appropriate 300 pages, it's gonna fucking suck. And what I kind of think about, because I've said this before, I'm turning into the big book defender on this channel. I have been thinking in the last like couple of days, I've been thinking about like long books and why I think it's kind of like a really big mistake for publishing to scorn long books the way that they do. Because if you don't know, right now, unless you are a person, like if you're Hanya Yanagihara, the rules don't apply. But if you are like me, and you are not rich, and you don't fucking live in New York, and you don't know people who are important, who are like important to the man and the big conservative publishing corporations, like if you don't have those connections, the rules apply doubly to you, and you're basically at this point gonna be expected to turn in a pamphlet, unless it's porn, in which case they might give you a couple extra pages. But they don't want your long book if you have something that is over fucking 75K. I mean, they want it, like, the word on the street is they want it the shorter the better. And the logic that I'm hearing for this is a whole lot of bullshit. So people say, sips tea, people say that the reason the publishing corporations are doing this is because of Mother Earth and because they want to save pages, which is the biggest load of horseshit I have ever heard in my entire fucking life. So it's not fucking that. We all know that that's not the real fucking reason. The other reason, of course, is like attention spans and wanting to appeal to the broadest possible market, including people who are maybe more reluctant readers and are gonna be too threatened by something like this, want something that is like really easy reading, want something that has a shit ton of porn and so on and so forth. But I'm just thinking right now how like it just kind of feels like there has been a little bit of a cultural shift starting to happen in terms of people being maybe a little bit over social media. And just like hear me out on this. I mean, I was talking with some of the other Caesars in the Caesars Forum, which is our Discord server, so you should read about it at the link in the description if you want to have me on Discord. And it's basically like we have digital accountability threads and we have also like general threads. And if you get admitted as Caesar, which is like higher level and like you get to be my friend basically, then there's additional stuff like 4B resources if you're into that, selfie channels, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about music right now. But yeah, so check that out. But we're talking in the Caesars Forum a little bit about like, I don't know, like how social media is like becoming so enshittified that it's becoming like really bad and just like not fun anymore. And there are many, many people who are like using it, but they're only using it out of addiction. And it like raises the fucking question of like, well, how long are those people actually gonna keep using it? Because like the more people, like, I feel like maybe it's because me and Victor are very openly anti-social media, but I feel like me and Victor are like meeting people all the time who are like straight up like, yeah, I don't have social media. And like you can say if you want that those people are lying, but social media is like so bad at this point that sometimes I question why you people are even on my videos, because YouTube, like, I want to find more booktubers to watch, but so much content is literal crap. Like, it's just trash. And a lot of it is just like social media becoming like ruined by corporations and advertisers and shit. And like the thing is once you ruin the platform that somebody has sunk like basically like years of their life into, are they really gonna want to like remake on a separate platform and do it all again? Like, unless you're me and you're a person who is driven by content creation, like, I don't know how likely it is that you are going to remake again. And so that person then at that point becomes a non-social media user and their attention span recovers. There are so many people right now, and this has been steadily happening for many years, who are kind of like getting a little bit tired of it, and like, I don't know if there's like something that, for example, YouTube or TikTok can do to like fix the problem at this point. I just feel like people are getting kind of fed up. People are getting a little fed up with celebrities and social media and a whole bunch of shit that makes us stupid. And once people get more fed up with that, like especially young people too, I've been picking up on this a little bit, where like people are realizing that it's fucking lame to spend your whole life inside your house, like just watching videos of people being stupid and like just begging for your attention. So once people start, like if there's a cultural shift and like people stop being these just like adult infants who want their binky, name change, like Star Wars porn alternate universe shit, what are you gonna do when people get smarter and they actually like want more out of books? I think it's folly to every time something is longer and demands more of your attention to immediately be like, well, this needed to be edited down because no one wants this. Because does no one want this? I mean, this is literally a New York Times bestseller, and like, I want it. Like, I don't want the Spark Notes version. Like, I do want to know how Julius Caesar was in bed, actually. I do. I do want to hear about her putting the pearl in her drink and crunching it in front of all the senators to make them gasp at her wealth. I do want to hear about all of her outfits, actually. I don't want that shit. Like keep the damn scissors away from the manuscript, because I think that I want all that shit. And frankly, as a reader, I think it makes my experience more fucking enjoyable to have all that shit. I want the trauma and the pain to be drawn out. Because it's like, it's so grand and it makes you feel like you experienced something. I don't want it to be this like fade to black at the end where it just like you presume the suicide happens after. Draw it out and make it as agonizing and anguish-inducing as possible, and make it feel like a beautiful fucking grand tragedy that deserves this length and that deserved all that time from me. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like as people get sick of social media, eventually their attention span is like, it's gonna like get better. And, you know, like, think about me when I was on my digital detox. Do you think I was complaining about all these details? I was not. I was happy to, at the end of the day, be like, okay, sweet, I get to go back to Egypt now. Stop sterilizing everything. It's just like, people see like a really rich, lush text and they immediately like take the spray thing of bleach and they start like trying to bleach it and like take all of the richness and the sensuality out of it. Stop it. Maybe there is a market for books that have a little bit more effort put into them. Like, that's great if you want to read like R2-D2, C-3PO, coffee shop, alternate universe shit. Like, great, good for you. I am glad that there are kids who would not otherwise be reading who are reading that. But for me, as an educated person and as like an older person with more life experience, I want books that reflect the complexity of my life experience. And frankly, even if you look on this website, there are plenty of booktubers that were formerly stuck in that, oh, I only want to read fluffy YA shit loop, that eventually broke out of that, because eventually you do get fucking sick of reading the same thing over and over again. Have a little bit of respect for readers and like the audience, maybe, I don't know, and respect for the subject matter also, as I've talked about. I love actually a book that takes its time. God, I feel like I like ordered this video in a weird way because now it's like a weird segue for me to talk about Antony versus Caesar. This book, it's so damn interesting, contrasting her relationships with first with Julius Caesar and then later with Mark Antony in this book. I absolutely loved both, but for very different reasons. As was maybe implied by the introduction, I did find Mark Antony a little bit infuriating at times. I do not think that I would be able to date a Mark Antony. Caesar, though? Well, he may have been a dictator, but he was kind of dreamy in this, honestly. I do think that it's like interesting to think about how when Cleopatra was with Caesar, she had like she was the more passive person in the relationship, and then when she was with Mark Antony, she was like the more dominant person in the relationship. And I do think that like her relationship with Mark Antony was like more high romance and probably like it seemed more affecting to her as a character. Yeah, I don't know. As a reader, the Julius Caesar romance was the one that was more intoxicating to read about. I mean, maybe it's because as a reader I was in her head and intoxicated for the same reasons that she was. Because of course Julius Caesar he's got everything covered. He never flinches. He is always in control. And Mark Antony is the total opposite, where he is not good at having control. This book associates him with Dionysus in that way. He is more of an out of control person. And ultimately, it's funny, like, it seemed like she suffered more in her relationship with Mark Antony, but at the end of the day, I also felt like that relationship was more fitting for her. I don't think that Cleopatra is a wait by the phone type of woman. And that is kind of what she often was reduced to when she was with Julius Caesar. Oh, speaking of other relationships in this book, I just loved that they gave her friends. I love just like the platonic relationships that she had in this book. There was one queen, I need to check who it was. Okay, I don't remember if the other queen was at Philae or Miro, but she was at one of those, and it was somewhere on the African continent, but I don't know how far south it was. But she meets this other queen, and they have this amazing conversation about power. And she even comes in at the end of the book, and that again is like shit that needs to be edited out. And it's like, but no, I love that we're circling back to this character, because now you're doing justice to that character. Just, I'm so glad that she did it that way, because that's a really easy thing to neglect in books like this about powerful women. I love the scene very early on in this where she is at like a feast with her father as like a young girl, a child, and she already can tell that her father is embarrassing himself in front of the Romans, and of course her relationships with her children as well. I just loved that they gave space to that in this. Yeah, space for like her and her children to specifically be like just passing time with their father, with Mark Antony, because I don't think Julius Caesar spent a great deal of time with Caesarion, his son, with Cleopatra. It's fantastic. I honestly cannot recommend this enough. I don't know, so this author has there are two other books by her mentioned here. She has one like this on Mary, Queen of Scots, and then she also has one of Henry VIII. So very intrigued by the Henry VIII one. I am not sure I would want to be in his head for 900 pages, but at the same time, because I feel that way, I'm kind of really curious about it. So let me know if any of you have read either of those. I highly, highly, highly recommend this. It's sublime. Just take a month and make this the only book that you're reading, and you will not regret it. It's just probably one of the best books that I've ever read. I'm not sure. I need to let it sit for a little bit while longer, but it looks gorgeous on my shelf, and it's clearly had a ton of work and a ton of talent put into it. So I am passing that on to you with my highest recommendation. I am sure it would make a fantastic companion read with Pearl S. Buck's Imperial Woman. Sending that one your way as well. I talk about that one in my 2 5-star reads for $5 video. Let me know. I'm looking for more books about female rulers and female monarchs. Let me know if you've got recommendations for books like that, and specifically ones that don't shy from the darker sides of being a ruler, but don't do it in a shamey way. In both this and Pearl S. Buck's Imperial Woman, the authors are very like frank about the main female character's cunning and intelligence and willingness to be ruthless and manipulate, but there is never any guilt about it, and that is something that I find really, really sublime about both of them. And yeah, frankly, just super empowering to read about, especially in this day and age. That is all I have for you today. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I hope you will read and enjoy this book along with me. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Bye.
Crystal highways lit by stars, mystic vision.